Hey everyone, Cerebral Tackle here. I know I teased in my community post that there was going to be more information about the Runyan and Cominsky scandal coming down the pipe. There is. Hopefully it'll even be a two-part series. This video here, that's not it. So don't take it as clickbait. This is a different story. We're staying on the subject of cheating, but this is something you might not exactly expect. Now there's one more little bit of housekeeping before we get on to tonight's story. It's concerning that 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Be on the lookout in my community tab. The details and official rules will be coming very soon. Because towards the end of this month, the 28th, someone's going to be the proud new owner of a Plano Edge Terminal 3700 series box. Now that we have the housekeeping out of the way, I have a bit of a different story to tell you concerning the subject of cheating tonight. As you see on the title, it's when cheating isn't cheating. Not even cheating at all. I want to take you to, I think, around 2006. I was secretary for a new club. And this particular club was being run by a young man, very new to the position of president. And was a great angler. The kid could fish. He could really fish. Managing people, he was new to. And the club was kind of in disarray, so he had his work cut out for him. But he was brave, and he stepped up to the plate, and he bit off the task. Now, this young man had been in this club for a couple of years before I got there. When he decided to run for president, he enlisted my help and wanted me to be voted in as secretary of the club. All that worked out. Now, this club was an older club. It had been established for a while, but it was new to me. And, well, there were some established folks in there that had been around a long time and wanted things to be done a certain way, and that all kind of happens when you've been in a club for a long time. As with anything else, you kind of get into a routine, how rules are done, how things are supposed to go, and, no one's really a big fan of change, so they kind of like things to be kept that way. This club was no exception. Many of its members were middle-aged to older. There were very few young guys in this organization. The kid, being a young man and kind of new to the game, had the task in previous years of running the website. He was good at it and he kept up with it, but there's always going to be detractors, right? Especially when you're young. There's always going to be some older gentlemen that kind of take issue with you and may not even like you. Today's story is concerning one of those guys. There was a guy in the club that had a couple issues with the president, and they didn't always see eye to eye. It wasn't like a horrible rivalry or backstabbing, anything like that, right? Nothing big. They just didn't really care for one another. Here I am, secretary, brand new, thrust into the middle of this little back and forth. Having dealings with both guys, I liked them both. The older gentleman, I could see where he had some issues here and there, and good reason. The young guy was a good buddy, so I had some loyalty to him too. I kind of saw it as my place to kind of keep the peace and make sure things with the organization ran smoothly and kept going in the right direction. Fast forward to somewhere between May and July. I remember it being a summer tournament. We were on a lake out east, and well, an accusation of cheating occurred. Two bystanders on the bank identified one of our anglers as reaching into two different live wells on his boat to grab fish and put them in the way back. Bass boats will have, generally speaking, two different live wells. Well, he was reaching into one side and grabbing a fish and reaching into the other side and grabbing a fish and putting them in his back. Well, so was his fellow competitor too, was also going back and forth between each live well. Generally speaking, the boater puts his fish on one side and the non-boater puts his fish on the other. Unless there's a really big fish that needs extra room, then as long as you have them properly tagged, you can generally do that. But it looked fishy to these two bystanders. They turned it in to their significant others who were club members and participating in this tournament. After the two ladies informed the two participants of what they saw, the two gentlemen then took it to the president, the young guy. Just so happens, the guy that was reaching around in his live well was the dude he didn't get along with that I mentioned earlier. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not believe the president made the next decision out of malice. They didn't get along. He might have assumed the worst kind of subconsciously. I do not think there was any ill will or malice in the next decision. Now, having this information, the young man brought it to me as his secretary, told every other officer in the organization except for the treasurer. Now, the treasurer was very good friends with this older gentleman. I don't think he wanted the investigation to get tainted, get back to the guy prematurely, and things to get all cattywampus, right? We were trying to keep drama in the organization down, and the last thing we needed was this whole thing blowing up. We wanted to kind of do the investigation quietly and try to see if there was any merit to the accusations. So after a couple of weeks passing, we were approaching our next organizational meeting. I got a call from the president saying, you know what? The rest of the officers have voted, and I think we're going to give this guy the boot out of the organization, expel him. Here's the trick. If you get expelled from a group, you can, generally speaking, find another group and fish with them. It just means you're not welcome there anymore. If you get expelled for cheating, that gets you on a very bad blacklist. And then you're not going to be around anymore. Now, with the possibility of expulsion on the table, I started to get a little bit nervous. If you kick somebody for misconduct, it's one thing, right? Cheating, no, different ball game. And I want to make sure T's are crossed and I's are dotted before doing that. I don't want to take anyone's passion for fishing away from them if they don't duly have it coming. I wasn't sure we'd met the burden of proof on this one to make that call. I guess what I'm trying to say here is something can look like cheating, smell like cheating, bark like cheating, crap like cheating, still might not be cheating, and we found that out in this very case. Having a background in loss prevention, I didn't go out the doors on somebody and apprehend them and effect an arrest until I was damn sure I had met all of my elements of the crime. I didn't think we'd met the elements in this situation. I expressed that to the other officers. They were sure they had enough. It didn't seem right to me. Something seemed off. So what I decided to do would be pretty unpopular. But I believe it saved the organization from collapse. Let me tell you what happened. The other officer I mentioned that wasn't aware of the vote going on for the expulsion, I gave him a call, knowing he was friends with the older gentleman, and, kind of let a stick of dynamite, if you will. I told him, hey, you better get so-and-so on the phone and get him to call the president and hash this out, because I don't want to be around when this thing goes down at the next meeting, because I'm not sure we're there. If the guy has an explanation, now's his time to get ahead of it, get it out, and let's figure out what the hell really happened. So immediately upon hanging up the phone with me, this other officer called the older gentleman, told him what was happening. The older guy obviously hit the freaking roof, and he had every right to. There wasn't only a very plausible explanation for what happened and a legitimate one. It ended up being one that showed great sportsmanship. What the president and other officers failed to remember was what happened that morning at Blastoff that set this whole thing into motion. We had a young man fishing one of our tournaments. I'm not sure it was his first time, but it was early on. He was a younger cat who actually needed a permission slip, a waiver actually from his parents to even be there and fish with us. Now, the boater he was assigned that morning no-showed him. Left this kid on the bank by himself for an all-day tournament just to be left at a ramp. No parents, nobody else around, no way to get out and fish, just left unsafe at a ramp. It wasn't cool. And don't get me wrong, we had a conversation with that boater about that. So the older gentleman that was called into question, he was fishing with his son. They generally team together, and we're a good team. This dude could fish too. He really could. He was a well-respected, very, very good angler. So he offered to let the young man ride in their boat as a third guy. Now, normally our rule stated only 2 people per boat. But the tournament director got together with the other officers that morning, and there was an exception made out of sportsmanship to not leave this young guy stranded on the ramp by himself all day in the summer heat, no way to fish, nowhere to go, being unsafe, and then get an even worse idea of the organization, right? This way, he'd get to go out, fish, have a good time, and oh, by the way, it keeps the club from looking like jerks altogether, right? So in this situation, the right decision was made. The young man gets to fish. Everybody wins. Yeah, there might be 3 anglers to a boat. How are they going to all catch a limit? But they actually did. They all 3 had a great freaking time on the water. The kid had a blast. The older gentleman and his son had a blast. They were out there kicking everybody else's butts. So you might be wondering what that has to do with anything. Well, it has everything to do with it. You're talking 3 anglers in 1 boat, 3 limits of fish. That's 15 bass and 2 live wells. They were having to keep them individually tagged so they know whose was whose. They were having to sort them by live well. Which live well had more room for bigger bass versus smaller bass? What time of day they were caught? How long have they been in the hot live wells, right? And keep them alive through a 10-hour tournament, which they did. They didn't turn in a single dead fish that day. So, of course, when the boat got back to the ramp that day, the boater was reaching in 2 different live wells. He was having to separate 3 limits of fish based on whose bag they went in. Yeah, not only was it not cheating, it was a sportsmanlike action. He was taking care of a young angler who needed a good experience. We made sure to give him one that day. At the end of the day, I have a couple of problems with how this whole thing shook out. First, I really wish the other officers would have remembered the rule exception we made for that morning of letting the boat of 3 go out together. Of course, things are going to look a little sketch when they start digging in live wells. The second thing was kind of taking a protest by proxy. The 2 ladies threw their significant others to the officers. I'm not saying a non-participant can't throw a penalty flag, but it needs to be directly to the tournament director for whatever actions they saw in the water they thought were out of line. So handling it the way it was handled wasn't in the best interest of anybody. I'm just glad I heard about it when I did, so that I could kind of do what I did behind the scenes and save everyone a whole lot of chaos. If this thing would have blown up at the meeting and either ended in an expulsion or a huge fight, it wouldn't have done anybody any good. This way, the most that happened was the president got his butt chewed at like 11 o'clock at night by the older gentleman. And well, frankly, kind of had it coming. Good news is, the kid learned some stuff, right? I think he grew from it. Now, he did come to me wondering how the word got out. I wasn't saying crap, so if you're watching, surprise! At the end of the day, the older gentleman and I got along quite well. He was a great graphics designer and did a lot for our organization. He was a solid dude. I think even he and the kid had a bit of a meeting of the minds at some point. I mean, it only took 11 o'clock at night butt chewing, but I think they got there. At the end of the day, everybody was good. Hey folks, I shared with you this story this evening as an example of when cheating is not cheating. Instead, end up being great sportsmanship and getting a young guy on the water in a day he'll never forget. Now, I'm not saying it has any parallels to Runyan and Cominsky. I'm not. They're innocent until proven guilty, legally, but I know we all have our own beliefs, right? That's obvious. What I am saying is that if you see something funny on the water, take it to a tournament director. Don't fluff it up. Don't embellish it. Give them just the facts. Let them do their investigation. Let them make the call and abide by the decision they make. They have a vested interest in making sure the integrity of their tournament is maintained. They're there for you folks. The people are their passion. Some folks say, oh, tournament directors make lots of money. If you're a tournament director for a club, you literally make zero, as in you're not allowed to take home money. You literally zero. That's your salary. And let's say you run a trail. Most guys that I know that run trails still end up having to put in their own money. No, they're there not to make money. They're there for the people. So cut them some slack. They're trying to do the best they can for you folks. Now, as far as that two-parter I told you is coming, I hope it's 2 parts. I'm waiting on a couple of sources to come through with information. I want to make sure the T's are crossed and I's are dotted before I come to you guys with this information. So let's keep our fingers crossed. With that said, I hope to talk to you guys again soon. If I don't, have a great rest of your week. Please like, share, subscribe, and you know the drill. Until next we meet, get on the water, keep it wet.